this morning I forgot my PowerPoint presentation. And somebody doesn't want me to do this apparently. But thanks to Tiffany, she copied it last time, and so it's on the computer. And I have my notes this time. So we will hopefully get there. One thing, as it says, we want to continue with the Revelation 13 beast. There are a lot of complexities involved, and there are as many interpretations to it as there are people to give them. But my purpose in this is to show you rather than to tell you what the scriptures say, so that if you take good notes, when you go home, you can go and follow it yourself and see how some of these conclusions are arrived at. So if we can go back to the Revelation 13 image of the beast with 7 heads. We'll do just a brief revision. We saw that in the first presentation, John saw a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast arose out of the sea, and on the heads of these horns were 10 crowns. And the beast was a strange looking beast. It was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and the mouth as the mouth of a lion. And an entity called the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And then one of the heads was wounded to death. Now there are 7 heads, which one of them would be wounded to death? But the deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And he goes on to give some of the actions of the beast. And in verse 11 he says, he saw another beast coming up out of the earth, with 2 horns like a lamb, spoke as a dragon. And this beast was able to exercise the power of the first beast, the one with 7 heads and 10 horns, and cause those who dwell in the earth to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And this little beast, now that looked like 2 horns like a lamb and spoke as a dragon, had miraculous powers to make wonders and to cause fire to come down from heaven and earth in the sight of men, and he was able to deceive. And this is one of the reasons why I want to go through this. To deceive those who dwell in the earth by means of the miracles he was able to do. And he did those miracles in the sight of the first beast, who had the wound and did live. But there's a strange thing that happens here. No explanation is given as to who or what this beast is. So as I said, there are 2 conclusions we can draw. It's either it's not meant for us to be understood, or we have to look elsewhere for the explanation. And we find a coincidence, or, well, not coincidence in the sense that a luck and chance thing, but another set of beasts in Daniel chapter 7, with the same attributes that we see here. In Daniel chapter 7, he saw 4 beasts come up out of the sea, whereas in Revelation there was 1 beast that came out of the sea. And the beasts that he saw would diverge from one another. That's important to remember. They're different from one another. And the first beast was like a lion. Can we put the graphic up? The first beast he saw was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. Again, a strange kind of an animal. And then the second beast was like a bear, and it lifted up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth. So then let's go to the bear. Yeah. had 3 ribs in its mouth, and again there's a significance to those 3 ribs in its mouth. And after this he saw a leopard, which had wings and 4 heads. And the medium was given to it. And then he saw a 4th beast, that was dreadful and terrible, strong exceedingly, with great iron teeth, and it devoured in pieces the residue of those 3 beasts that we saw, and it had 10 horns. So here we see 4 beasts in Daniel. One with the head of a lion, one with the head of a bear, another one with 4 heads of a leopard, and a 4th one with a strange, no description again is given to it. Just described with great iron teeth and had 10 horns. What does that mean? Well, let's go down to verse 17 of Daniel 7. And the angel is telling him now, these great beasts which are 4 kings or kingdoms that shall arise out of the earth. So we're getting an explanation, partial. But as I said before, the prophecies are given and the interpretations are given, and they give you a snapshot in time. They don't give you the whole picture. So that no explanation is given in Revelation 13. But we see here a snapshot given. The 4 beasts are kingdoms. Kings or kingdoms. They are synonymous. And it says, verse 19, and then he wanted to know the truth of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, and whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, and who broke in pieces and stamped the remnants of the other beasts with his feet. And verse 23, he said this, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and he shall devour the whole earth, and tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are the 10 kings that shall arise. Yeah, let's keep it up. Let's keep the graphic up. And another king shall arise among these kings with the 10 horns, and he shall be diverse or different from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, or 3 of the 10 horns. So this again, it tells us the 4th kingdom, or the beast with the nondescript beast, or the beast that wasn't given a description, with iron teeth and 10 horns, is the 4th kingdom. But note again, he doesn't tell us who or what these kingdoms represent. So again, it's either that we must come to the conclusion that it's not meant for us to be understood, or the explanation can be found elsewhere. And so we go over to Daniel chapter 8. And another vision is given to Daniel, verse 3. He saw a ram with 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high. One horn was higher than the other. And we don't have that there, we don't have that one there. But the higher horn came up after the other one. And then he saw a ram. The ram pushing westward and eastward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Very powerful creature. And he did according to his will, and he became great. And then he saw another animal, a he-goat this time, coming up from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn, or a prominent horn, between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had the 2 horns, and he ran to him in the fury of his power. And he said, and I saw him come close to the ram, and he was moved with choler, anger against him, and he smote the ram and broke his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him to the ground, stamped upon him. Notice how these empires stamp on one another. And there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, or the notable horn, and for it, or in its place, came up 4 notable horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. What did that mean? Let's go down to Revelation, to Daniel 8, verse 20. And the angel now is giving an interpretation. The ram which you saw, having 2 horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, or Greece. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, the first horn being broken, or the leader being killed, or died, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his part. So when the 4 kings stand up, they will not have the power that the nation, that the kingdom had when the first king was ruling. So now we have 2 kingdoms being identified. The Medes and Persians, or the Medo-Persian Empire, and Grecia, or the Greco-Macedonian Empire. So we have 2 empires now. We said 4. The 4 kings are 4 kingdoms that shall arise. We have 2. The second one is the Medo-Persian Empire, and the third one is the Greco-Macedonian Empire. What is the first one? And what is the fourth one? It doesn't say here. Again, we see the snapshot we get in time. It identifies the 2 empires for us. So we must go elsewhere to see where we can find out what's the first empire. Now, let's go back to Daniel chapter 2. Daniel had another vision, and you can read this entire chapter to get the gist. He had Nebuchadnezzar, in fact, had a vision, who was the king of Babylon. And we can go to the graphic and show the first one. This is what he saw. And freeze it so it doesn't go. He saw that image such as this, with a head of gold, the chest and the arms of silver, the belly and the thighs of bronze or brass. This is bronze, but the bronze that they had at that time was a mixture with gold. So it wasn't just brass as we would take, it was a semi-precious metal. In some instances it was even more valuable than certain carats of gold. So like if you had 10 karat gold, that bronze was more valuable than 10 karat gold. And then the legs of iron and the feet of iron, part iron and part clay. And verse 36 says, this is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Verse 37, it says, thou, O king, art the king of kings. For the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven has he given into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. And he says, and after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to you. It doesn't identify this other kingdom. Simply describes it as having the chest and arms of silver. And another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And again, he doesn't identify the kingdom of brass. And the fourth kingdom, the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, for as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things, and as iron that breaks all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. So he's given characteristics, but he doesn't identify it. And he goes on to say, and the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay. So the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken or partly brittle. And whereas you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. But again, he does not give an interpretation as to what the fourth empire is. But he identifies the first one, Babylon. And let's go to Daniel 5. Daniel 5, and let's go. And again, you can read this entire chapter. The rulership of Babylon is now passed to Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, Belshazzar. And one day he decided to have a feast, a fete, a party. He got his lords and his concubines and his wives, drinking wine, having fun, maybe watching some exotic belly dancing, etc. And of all the things he decided to do was to take the vessels that were used in the temple in Jerusalem that God had instructed Moses and the other Israelites to make to be used in worship. He decided he would take these vessels and drink wine from them. And apparently that was the ultimate insult to God. And while he was having fun, they saw a hand appear over one of the lighting braziers across there. So it meant that everybody could see it now. But you could only see this part from the hand, from the wrist down. Nothing else, just a hand writing. And when it was done, everybody was scared. Belshazzar, not the least of them. It says his knees were knocking. And the suggestion is that he wet himself. And more than wet himself, he soiled himself pretty badly. That's how shaken he was. They got Daniel, who had interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream, to come and give an interpretation. And verse 25 of Daniel 5, Daniel is given what this writing is. It says, and this is the writing that was given. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. And this is the interpretation. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. And he repeats that. God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. So he knows that he is done. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez, or Upharsin, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. And in that night, verse 30, was Belshazzar the king of the Chaldeans slain. And Darius the Median, or the Mede, took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. And so the Bible has given us the connection. The first kingdom is Babylon. Babylon was conquered by the Medo-Persian Empire under Darius. And this happened in one night, brother. One night this happened. He went, well, he didn't go to bed this night, but the rest of the empire went to bed. And the next morning, they found that they were taken over by the Medes and Persians. The empire lasted for less than 100 years. And one of the things that we should note here, Babylon was so confident that they would be virtually impregnable. They had the Euphrates River flowing through the city, but they had massive walls surrounding that nobody could really think about penetrating. And it is said that you could ride 2 chariots abreast of one another on the top of the walls. But Darius and his engineers found a chink in their armor. The river flowed through the city. And so what they did, they diverted the river upstream, put it in another channel, and then they stole around the riverbed, and while everybody was sleeping, the city was virtually at their mercy. They walked down on the riverbed and got into kingdom and took over the Medo-Persian Empire. So we have 3 of the empires established. First one is Babylon. Second one, the Medes and Persians. The third one, the empire of the leopard, the king of Grecia, the Greco-Macedonian Empire. Let's go back to Revelation 13, and the image in Revelation 13. Let's see the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. Let me read something. Well, I'll do that a little bit. This is now the beast that we'll see. We had them as 4 individual beasts in Daniel. But suddenly we see a composite beast. Not the 4 separate ones, but we see them on one beast. What does that mean? What is the head with great iron teeth and 10 horns? No explanation is given. But history tells us that the empire that succeeded the Greco-Macedonian Empire was the Roman Empire. So we've seen 3 established. The one that is unknown, that was never mentioned, is the Roman Empire, and there perhaps is a good reason for this. This prophecy, had this been known at the time that the empire existed, who knows what could have happened to more of the brethren. So that information was hidden, never made public in the notes of the Bible. It is only those whom God chose to enlighten could have understood. Because remember, Rome was ruling in Christ's day when he started the church. So if it is, you are now having a prophecy that whoever can read and understand and say, you are now criticizing the Caesars, and as we see the beast with the 2 horns, etc. That could have brought the church under intense persecution. So that was not revealed. But history now tells us it was the Roman Empire. Now it says, back to Revelation 13, I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death. Now this is where it begins to get a little bit complicated. We have 7 heads. Which one of the heads was wounded to death? Now, some say the 7th head, but which one is the 7th head? Which one is the first head? You can't tell. Because 7 and last, some say the last head, these are ordinal things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, first, last. But having a graphic like this, you can't tell which is the first head, nor which is the last head. So how do we know? Well, remember individually, the heads represented empires. So that the head of the lion represented the Babylonian Empire. The head of the bear represented the Medo-Persian Empire. The four heads of the leopard represented the Greco-Macedonian Empire. And then the fourth kingdom was just identified as the fourth kingdom, which we now know to be the Roman Empire, had the head and 10 horns. But the only head that was actually alive at that time was the head of the fourth kingdom, because the other three kingdoms had passed into history. So it is only the head that could be wounded to death was the head that was actually living, which is the head with 10 horns. So that is the head that received the deadly wound. While the entire image represents the Roman Empire, it represents the Roman Empire at its zenith, when it had conquered all of the territories that it had conquered. But when we saw it in Daniel 7, we're looking at the nascent empire, when it's now starting. Doesn't have all of the other kingdoms. It's starting off, and this is the description. 7 with the beast with great iron teeth. It is giving you the characteristic, the nature of the empire, and it has 10 horns. That is the head that was wounded to death. So don't get this clear. Now when the head was wounded to death, the beast naturally died, because the other heads didn't really have life in them. It was merely a representation. It says, and the deadly wound was healed. Again, what does that mean? How does the deadly wound die? And why is it being presented this way? Let's go and look at the maps. So we'll see why this image is being presented. Let's go and look at some maps. We're going to look at the first one, and we're going to see the area that the first kingdom, the Babylonian Empire, occupied. We can spread them all out, and you can just click on them and make it easier, so we can have them across the page. We see the area that Babylon occupied. When this empire fell to the Medes and Persians, it was added into the territory that the Medes and Persians controlled. Now remember the description of the beast with three ribs in its mouth. The 3 ribs represent Egypt, Libya, and Babylon itself, as it was on its way to becoming the dominant nation. Those were the 3 ribs. It counted Egypt, Libya, and Babylon. And that's what the 3 ribs in its mouth signify. And we see the difference between the area that it occupied. Now note the similarity. The image in Daniel 2 had the second empire with its chest and arms of silver. The beast, the bear, in Daniel 7, had a bear pushing itself up on one leg. One leg is higher than the other. So we see two arms of silver. We see the bear pushing itself up on 2 legs, on its 2 forefeet, one higher than the other, as it says. And then the ram. The 2 horns of the ram, one horn came up after the other and became more prominent. So the ram in Daniel 8, the image with the silver chest and arms in Daniel 2, and the bear in Daniel 7, all represent the second empire, the Medo-Persian Empire. we see the space that it occupied. But as we saw in Daniel 8, the Medo-Persian Empire was conquered by the Greco-Macedonian Empire. And it described the he-goat as not touching the ground. And the leopard was given, it had wings like a bird. That's an interesting feature, because Alexander the Great's army was never more than about 50,000 men. Never more than that. And he defeated the Medo-Persian Empire with 250,000 men. Don't ask me how, but he did. On one occasion. And on another occasion, when he put paid to the final empire, as it said, he smote him with cola and broke both his horns. He put to flight an entire army of about 500,000 men. And note the imagery that it gave of a leopard. Now, a leopard is a relatively small creature. They go from about 150 pounds in fully grown females to about 225 pounds in fully grown males. But a leopard can drag the carcass of a wildebeest or an antelope 2 to 3 times its own body weight, perpendicularly up a tree for 20 to 30 feet and drag it up to the tree. It can kill a beast that is much heavier than itself. And so God gave this imagery. And now we see the area that the Greco-Macedonian Empire, it went as far as India. And he began to conquer lands in India. But after their first few conquests, his army mutinied. Maybe because they were getting sick, some say, malaria, but they were fed up of fighting and they wanted to go home. And so they quit. And Alexander, roughly a year after he had established all this, as it says, the notable horn was broken. He died. Some say he died as a consequence of alcohol poisoning because he went into a drunken binge. Some say maybe he had contracted malaria while he was in India. Nevertheless, he died. And so his empire was broken up among 4 of his generals. Let me read something here for you. It says here, I have this in my booklet, Who or What is the Beast of Revelation? Page 14, it says, the Greco-Macedonian Empire was led by Alexander the Great. After just a 1-year reign, and remember the 1-year reign is when he had the empire at its zenith, because he was the head for like 8 years. He started as a young man, 24 years old, and by the time he was 32 years old, he had conquered all that. And then he died. After just a 1-year reign, Alexander died, and his generals, Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Seleucus, divided his enormous empire into 4 regions. First region is Egypt, Libya down here. Macedonia, the second one, and Greece. That's across there, right at the top here. Macedonia is a little over the other side. Greece, Macedonia is just at the top of Greece there. Thrace and Western Asia, that's by this long strip here, just across there, close to the Media, Persia there. And then Syria, you see Syria there, and all the territories to the east, going all the way up to India. That was the territory that he eventually conquered. That was now split up. Now the Roman Empire came and defeated all of these four empires, the four different, and therefore it absorbed all of them. And let's see the map with where the Roman Empire now expanded to. They abandoned lots of the territory that was in India because these were largely not very heavily populated. So they abandoned it. And now here's where the empire. You see how far it stretched now? Alexander the Great's army stopped at Greece, down at the bottom by the boot down there. See how far the Roman Empire expanded? All the way to Britain, including what is France and the Iberian Peninsula, down into North Africa, and including Italy. So all of the territory that was in these empires was now absorbed into the Roman Empire. And remember, the Roman Empire even spread to the Caribbean, to the Americas. Because even though we think it is the Spanish Empire was part of the Roman Empire under the Habsburg dynasty. And I think my friend here is a historian. The reason why we have Spanish mainly on this region, we have one Portuguese territory, was a decision that was made by the Pope to prevent conflict from between Spain and Portugal. So in the Treaty of Tordesillas, the Pope decided to give all of the territories west of the Azores to Spain, thereby denying Portugal access to those territories. And so this is why you have all of Latin America, Central America, even up to North America, because they had La Florida today, they had going up into Arizona, Texas. There are a number of territories in what is today the United States. All of this was under the Spanish Empire, and they left the rest to the Portuguese Empire. And so what they ended up with? They ended up with Angola and Mozambique in Africa, Macau, Portuguese Goa, Somoza, etc., a few places. But during that time, Isabella and what was her name? Ferdinand and Isabella. They were, in fact, I think one of their daughters got married to Philip, who was a descendant of the Habsburg dynasty eventually. So at that time, the Habsburg dynasty was ruling in Europe. So the Spanish Empire was actually part of the Roman Empire, and they spread all the way. So the Roman Empire was a large empire, and it occupied all this territory. And so that is why, brethren, we see the beast now with 7 heads and 10 horns, including the lion, the bear, the 4 heads of a leopard, and of course the home territory, Italy, where it stems from. That is why we see the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. So whenever we see that beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, with the bear, the lion, etc., because there's another 7 heads and 10 horns, but it is different from this. The beast with the head of a lion, the bear, the leopard, and the great iron teeth and 10 horns with the bear and stuff, that is the Roman Empire at its zenith, when it was big. The beast with just the 7 heads, with just the head alone, is when it started off. So, the deadly wound was healed. And it says here, it was wounded with a sword. In Revelation 13 and verse 14, it says, another beast with 2 horns like a lamb was telling those who dwelt on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword. Now, a gentleman made a big deal out of a sword. What is a sword and what it simply means that they were defeated. And let me quote another. The Roman Empire fell, and they recorded it as effectively 476 AD. Rome fell to the Vandals, a German tribe that came up from North Africa. The Vandals ruled for a while, and then they were removed by another Germanic tribe, the Heruli, who ruled for a while. And then they were removed by another Germanic tribe, the Ostrogoths, which came out of around the Iberian Peninsula there. Now remember that we saw in Daniel, 3 of the horns were plucked up by the roots. He said he saw another little horn coming up amongst the 10, before whom 3 of the 10 horns were plucked up by the roots. And maybe you can go back and read this in Daniel chapter 7, verse 24. He says, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom, that is the 4th kingdom, are 10 kings, or 10 kingdoms that will arise. And another king shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first 10. And he shall subdue 3 kings. So the horns, some say that the empire was broken up into 10 pieces. That is not a particularly, because if you look at this, there are more than 10 nations there. And every empire that gets broken up into pieces. So that to say that the 10 horns represent the 10 nations into which it was broken up is not a particularly valid interpretation, because for argument's sake, Britain had an empire. All of the English-speaking territories were once part of Britain that we have in the Caribbean. It was got broken up, and how many individual countries do we have? We have about 11 or 12. They also had territory in Africa. And about what? 20-something countries in Africa today. When empires fall, they get broken up. So it is not much of a prophecy to say that the empire got broken up into 10 nations in Europe. It is factually inaccurate, because as we see, the vast area that they have contains more than 10 nations. So, what do the 10 horns signify? Now remember what happened. The 10 horns are 10 kingdoms, 10 kings who shall arise, but they will arise out of the 4th kingdom. Now we just identified the 3 kingdoms that arose. The first one was the Vandals. They conquered Rome. And then they were followed by the Heruli. And then the Heruli were followed by the Ostrogoths. So note what happened. They didn't happen at the same time. The Vandals came, they were removed by the Heruli. And then the Ostrogoths came and removed the Heruli. So we had a succession. So the inference we can gain from this is that the 10 horns are not simultaneous things. In fact, there's never been any recorded aspect of the Roman Empire being ruled by 10 emperors at any time. So that the 10 horns must represent the sequential now revivals of the Roman Empire. The 3 were removed because they were not, strictly speaking, they were not Roman. They had a different religious belief. They believed in Arianism, whereas the empire, by the Bishop of Rome, was Catholic. So there was a conflict. They didn't believe in Christ. And so there was the conflict religiously with the Aryan Germanic tribes. And so they had to be removed. And it says, they were plucked up by the roots. And today, the persons who do these things, they say you can find, as they say, neither hide nor hair of the vandals. Nobody knows where they are. Nobody knows where the Heruli are. Nobody knows where the Ostrogoths are, even though we know that they had occupied Spain, but you can find no remnants of these tribes. So that they were plucked up by the roots. And then what was left? 7 horns were left. Now, based on this sequence, some have attempted now to continue the succession of heads, of the horns. By the way, I should say that the horns represent kingdoms, civil kingdoms. And because we saw 3 of them in sequence being uprooted, then the logic is that the next 7 will continue likewise, one after the other. Now that is a logical explanation, but it is also flawed. Because when the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, that was part of the empire that we saw in the beginning. Let's bring it back up again. When that beast was slain, when the deadly wound was administered, that beast never emerges again in that. Let's go to the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. When that head with great iron teeth and 10 horns, when that beast received the deadly wound, now you may think that the deadly wound being healed, it will come back like this. No. This beast never emerges again. Never. The next version, after the deadly wound was healed, the new beast that we saw is a scarlet-colored beast. Let's drop down. This is the beast we see next. The beast that we saw before represented what was called pagan Rome, or imperial Rome. That fell in 476 AD. That beast is never seen again. This is the beast. After the deadly wound was healed, this is the beast that emerges. The beast that we see in Revelation 17. And we have a woman dressed in purple and scarlet, and a beast, scarlet-colored beast. Note, 7 heads and 10 horns. There were 7 horns that were left to be now revived, but that beast is dead. It is now the heads that are now being resurrected and revived. We will get into that in the next version, the next time we do this, in the 3rd part. But remember, This is the beast that now emerges. And this beast is now the Roman Empire reborn as the Holy Roman Empire. Why is it called the Holy Roman Empire? Because first of all, a number of the emperors have now adopted Christianity as their religion. And secondly, the bishops of Rome, aka the popes, now have a direct hand in crowning emperors of this new empire. So this is now a Christian empire on the surface. This is an empire that is now devoting itself to spreading Christianity. And you remember the Inquisition. If you didn't believe in Jesus Christ, that was it. You would be executed. And so the conquistadors and all of these people who came down here, they would slaughter people because you were not Christian. And if you profess Christianity, okay. But they would put that to you. The Inquisition would sit and drag you before it, and you would, you know, you were forced to recant whatever you believed and to adhere to the religion of this new empire. And again, there's a little complexity in this, but we'll leave that for the next time because I don't want you to get too confused with this. Because there is the statement that you had 7 heads, and after it identified who the 7 heads are, it says another one is the 8th and is of the 7 and is and was and is not. That's kind of complicated. We're going to leave that for the next time. But bear in mind, this is the empire that emerges. And let me read something here for you. The same booklet, What is the Beast of Revelation? It says, let's examine the first 3 horns of the Roman Empire, for they represent the period that encompasses the wound. The deadly wound was brought on by the Roman Empire, by barbaric tribes from the north. 3 Germanic kingdoms from northern Europe called the Vandals, the Heruli, and the Ostrogoths conquered Rome in succession. Some brief explanation of these tribes and their timing is helpful. In 455, the Vandals swept through northern Africa and eventually attacked and defeated the city of Rome itself. And they have here in parenthesis that this tribe was so barbaric and destructive that the modern term vandalize is derived from their name. 21 years later, in 476, the Heruli under Odoacer established an occupying government in Rome. Historians universally accept 476 as the official date of the fall of the Roman Empire. The kingdom of the Ostrogoths, which lasted from 493 to 554, in turn replaced the Heruli. Like the Vandals and Heruli, the Ostrogoths were eventually driven from Rome, and together they represented what has been called the transition age of the Roman Empire. But it's important to understand that these 3 brief successions of northern tribes were not actually Roman governments, but were governments in Rome. So they were still part of the 10 horns. They had Arianism, not Catholicism, so there was a conflict between them. And the Bishop of Rome, aka the Pope, was very active in having these tribes displaced. In fact, in the final tribe, he got the emperor from the north, who at that time was Justinian. But remember, the Roman Empire, it had 2 legs. And we saw this in the statue. Maybe we could go back to that. We saw the statue with 2 legs. That symbolized that the Roman Empire would be divided. Not divided in the sense that it is weakened somehow, but it has 2 capitals. Rome, the western leg, And in the eastern leg, which is today around Turkey, it had another leg in a city called Constantinople. And it was then referred to as the Byzantine Empire. And it was called Constantinople after one Roman emperor, Constantine. But because the empire had gotten so large and we saw the massive area, it became difficult to administer. So the decision was taken, you administer half, Rome will administer the next half. And that's why we see from this head. But it says nothing. This is why. Remember, this is a snapshot. We see two legs. That's the snapshot. It tells us something about the empire, but doesn't identify. So the snapshot is two legs, the empire is going to be divided. And then we see later on, in history now, that the empire is divided because we have a capital in Constantinople, in modern-day Turkey, and one in Rome. And that's why it has that. The feet and clay, and iron clay, also represent something. The Bible reveals that 10 kingdoms are going to arise, because you have the 10 tribes. 10 are going to arise. And they will last until Christ comes. Not that they do, they will last in duration, but they will be in existence when Christ comes. So that the idea that the empire was broken up into 10 nations isn't a valid one, because no kingdom has lasted over 3,000 years. The Roman Empire was the longest of the three world empires that we had. It lasted for pretty close to 500 years. Alexander the Great's kingdom lasted for maybe a little over 200. Babylon less than 100. The Medo-Persians a little over 200. But even as the western leg of the Roman Empire had collapsed, the eastern one in Constantinople continued. It lasted for 1,200 and something years. But it never had the influence and power that the western half had. And when they were eventually reunited, because of the presence of the Bishop of Rome. Remember it says here in Revelation 13, it says, 11, he said, I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. He had two horns like a lamb and spoke as a dragon. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast. So that he does wonders, and I imagine this would be a future time. He makes fire to come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles he had to do. This is not recorded in history, so this is yet future. Saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the sword, wound by the sword, and did live. And he had power to give life to the image of the beast. We will get into this more. What is the image of the beast? How do you give life to the image of the beast? Thus, let me leave you with this so that you can think about it. Remember what the beast is. The beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. It is the... What is the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns? The Roman Empire. To differentiate it from the Holy Roman Empire, you can call it pagan Rome or imperial Rome. So that the image of the Roman Empire is not making statutes per se. It is replicating the government of the Roman Empire. Why? Well, strange as it may sound, and next time I'll probably get some other later. The church with the Bishop of Rome, organized its system of the hierarchical system according to the hierarchy and governmental structures that obtained in the Roman Empire. So he's telling countries now to organize your governments along similar lines. Why? Because at one time people believed that the Roman Empire was the kingdom of God on earth. And I'll find that for you and read it. That's how people viewed it. So if this is the kingdom of God on earth, and we have this perfect government, why would you want to be messing around with lesser stuff? And this beast with the two horns like a lamb, it says, he had the power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many, or when governments speak, you know what they do. They issue edicts. In this case, as happened with the Treaty of Tordesillas, he issued a papal bull, which is a document written by the Vatican. So you issue that should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast, and again, this is not kneeling down and praying to statues. This is deciding to follow this pattern that is set down, that how we should set up your government. The Bible calls it worship, because you believe it's now the greatest thing since sliced bread, as we say. And he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, except he who had the mark, or the number, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. And then it leaves us with a cryptic statement here. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. We will get into this a little bit more on the other occasion. Just let me leave one final thing here with you. This is a magazine that was published by the Worldwide Church of God. Copyright is in 1983, 1984. The history of Europe and the church. Here's what it says on page 12. Under the deadly wound. But the city of Rome is fast dying, and even the papacy's efforts cannot save her. No, the papacy's efforts to save Rome. The empire lives only in a ceremonial name. Western emperors are mere puppets of the various Germanic generals. Now even the ceremony is about to be stripped away. It is 476, and a boy monarch sits on the throne in Rome. His name is Romulus Augustus, but he is satirically dubbed as Augustus, meaning Little Augustus. By curious coincidence, he bears the names of the founder of Rome, Romulus, and of the empire, Augustus, both of which are about to fall. The German warrior Odoacer, or Odovaker, a hero-like chieftain ruling over a coalition of Germanic tribes, sees no reason for carrying out the sham of the puppet emperors any longer. On September 4th, he deposes Romulus Augustus. The long and gradual process of the fall of Rome is now complete. The Western Empire has received a mortal wound. Rome is fallen. The office of the emperor is vacant. There is no successor. The former mistress of the world is the booty of barbarians. It says here, with the fall of the Western Empire, ancient history draws to a close. A transitional period follows. Every portion of the Western Empire is occupied and governed by kings of Germanic race. Many of these barbarian kings are, like Odoacer, converts to Arian Christianity as opposed to the Catholic Christianity of Rome. But their kingdoms are not destined to endure. Forces are already silently at work. No, silently at work. Forces seeking to mold out of the ruins of the old Western Empire a revived and revitalized Roman Empire, a non-Arian empire. These healing forces will ultimately succeed in healing the deadly wound of AD 476 with epoch-making consequences. And so the next time, brethren, we will look at the healing of this beast and how it now manifests itself.